Hello and welcome back. Now we've created some fabric nodes and we've cached these poses that are used for when we need our hand to be adjusted for the assault rifle versus the submachine gun. Now we need to decide how we can switch between these two. And in order to do that, we're going to need a variable. So let's go ahead and create a variable on our anim instance. So let's go back into our anim instance class. I'm going to go ahead and open shooter anim instance.h and dock it here and right click and close all but this. Now in shooter anim instance.h, I want a variable that will hold the weapon type for the shooter character's equipped weapon. Now in order to have the weapon type enum defined here, we need to include the file that has the enum declaration. And the file that declares our weapon type enum is weapon.h. We have weapon type here in weapon.h. Now, since we want access to this type in shooter anim instance.h, we can create a header file and move this declaration into that header file just like we did with ammo type.h. Here's ammo type.h, which contains ammo type. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to right click on the shooter folder and click add and new item. And I'm going to create a header file and I'm going to call this weapon type.h. Now let's go ahead and take our location and make sure that it goes into the right location. It wants to stick it into the intermediate file, but that's not correct. Let's click browse. And we're going to click shooter, source, shooter, and we're going to stick it here where all the other source files are. So we're going to select this folder and create weapon type.h. We're going to click add. Now, if we go into our weapon.h, we can take our weapon type and copy that and paste it right here in weapon type.h and save that. Now in weapon.h, instead of defining the weapon type here, we can delete this declaration and include weapon type.h here. So include weapon type.h. And again, we need to make sure the generated.h include is the last one in the list. Now that we have a weapon type.h, we can include that in shooter anim instance.h. So that way we don't have to include weapon.h. So let's go ahead and include weapon type.h here, and we're going to add a variable to shooter anim instance for the weapon type of the currently equipped weapon. So let's go down to the bottom of our private section and create an enum of the type weapon type. So weapon type, and this is going to be the equipped weapon type. So I'm going to call it equipped weapon type. Now this is going to be visible anywhere, blueprint read write, category combat. So I'm going to take the U property from the above variable, turning in place, and stick it there. And I'll go ahead and give this a comment that says weapon type for the currently equipped weapon. So we can go into shooter anim instance.cpp and set the value of this in update animation properties. So here in Update Animation Properties, we're checking if the shooter character is valid. At the bottom of this, I want to check to see if the shooter character has a valid equipped weapon. So check if shooter character has a valid equipped weapon. Now, we need to make sure we have a getter for the currently equipped weapon. So let's go to shooterCharacter.h and go down to our public section and see if we have a public getter for equipped weapon. It looks like we haven't created one yet, so let's go ahead and create a get equipped weapon. So this will be force inline, and it's going to return an A weapon, and we're going to call this get equipped weapon. It'll be a const function, and it'll simply return equipped weapon. So we have a public getter. So in shooter anim instance.cpp, we can check if shooter character get equipped weapon returns null. And if it's not null, if it's valid, then we can set our equipped weapon type variable. So we're going to say equipped weapon type equals shooter character get equipped weapon, and from the equipped weapon we need to get the equipped weapon type, which means we need to call get weapon type. Now we don't have the weapon header included, so get equipped weapon returns an A weapon, so we need to go ahead and include weapon here. So we're going to include weapon.h, and then also we're going to get the same type of error for the weapon type enum, so we need to actually include weapon type.h as well. And so now, as long as the shooter's equipped weapon is valid, then we're getting that weapon type and setting it to this equipped weapon type variable. So we can go ahead and compile this, and then we should have a weapon type accessible from our AnimBP. So we're back here in the editor, and we're ready to choose which of these two cached poses to use depending on the weapon type enum value. So I'm going to scroll out, and I'm going to move these nodes beneath so that the output pose is down here at the bottom. I don't need this cached rotated root bone anymore. I now have the cached fabric SMG and the cached fabric AR, and we need to decide how to switch between these two. And of course, these two lines of nodes, I can give these comments. So I'm going to comment the first one and say fabric SMG, and I'm going to comment the second one and say fabric AR. So to choose between these, we're going to use the equipped weapon type enum. So get equipped weapon type, and from that we're going to use a node called blend poses, and we're going to blend based on E weapon type. So blend poses E weapon type. Now this takes a default pose. I'm going to use fabric SMG for the default pose, and then I'm going to plug this into the output pose. Now right click the node and add pins for submachine gun and assault rifle. They're right here at the bottom. So if we click submachine gun, we now have a pin for submachine gun pose. And if we right click and choose assault rifle, we have the assault rifle pose. Now I'll go ahead and copy this cached fabric SMG and plug that into submachine gun pose, and I'll use cached fabric AR for the assault rifle pose. So what this node will do is it'll take this equipped weapon type enum and it will blend between these poses based on this enum value. Now we could just plug this straight into output pose like I've done here, or we can drag it off and cache it. Let's drag it off and cache the pose, and let's call this cached fabric. So we now have cached fabric, and we're going to use this for the output pose. So let's type cached fabric, and we'll use cached pose, cached fabric. And here I'll give this a comment and say blend based on equipped weapon type. So let's go ahead and compile this and see how it works. So I can go ahead and hit play, and I can eject and make sure that the hand is at the right spot. And we can of course adjust this in the fabric node. And I'm going to go ahead and possess again and equip an AR, switch to that and eject. And we see that the hand is at the right spot for the AR. Now if I go back and switch back to the SMG and eject, the hand goes back to the spot for the SMG. So now we have the correct hand placement, and it changes depending on which weapon we're using by using a blend poses based on the E weapon type value. So that's going to conclude this video. In the next video, we're going to handle whether or not we should use this fabric depending on our combat state. So if we're reloading or if we're doing something that we shouldn't use fabric on, we're going to make sure not to use fabric for those situations. We'll see you soon.